Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. It's something of a staple of YouTubers that when we run out of ideas, we do a Q&A. Well, rest assured, I'm not doing a Q&A yet. I have one more idea to broach before I get there, and that is another YouTuber classic topic, trying to draw a link between watches and cars, and which kind of watch equals which kind of car. I'm going to do this a little bit differently today. I'm not comparing any particular watch to any particular car or even any particular brand to any particular brand of car. Instead, I'm going to look at the watch groups and compare those two and try and find an analog for a car group. Spoiler, I actually find pretty good analogies across the board, except for one watch group. I could not find something which replicates it in the car world. I'll start with the most obvious one and work my way down to the outlier I couldn't find an equivalent to. The most obvious one for me was Rolex. Okay, so what is Rolex? I think Rolex group for watches is the BMW group for cars. Think about the BMW, and us as kids all think about the M1 or the M2, the M series cars, and M3 and M5, whatever. But the truth is, BMW actually makes its money selling X3s and X5s and 3 Series and 5 Series sedans to families who want something good, solid, practical, well made, and that can be relied upon. That is your Datejust and your Oyster Perpetual and your Day Date and your Pearl Master. That is those watches. And just like the 3 Series, etc., is the bread and butter of BMW, those OPs and Datejusts are the bread and butter of Rolex. They are Rolex. Just as the M Sports are just the cream on, just the icing on the cake for BMW. The sports watches that we all get excited about, the Daytona and the Submariner and the Deep Sea and the Explorer, they are not Rolex. They are not the cake of Rolex. They're just the cream on the cake. And that's why Rolex and BMW are such good comparisons to each other. At a group level, it goes even further. You see, within the BMW group, the BMW brand has a little brother, and that little brother sells small, fun, very well made, very retro inspired cars. That is Minis. That sounds exactly like Tudor, that is the small brother of BMW, the small brother of Rolex, selling watches that a little bit smaller, a little bit cheaper, still well made, definitely rooted in the past. The comparisons between Rolex and Tudor and BMW and Mini are really difficult to avoid. It actually goes one step further because Rolex does have some models that blow way past the rest of their value prop. You know, they have the gem set Daytonas and so forth that start going way up into stratospheric prices. They don't add anything in particularly innovative. They're just made from precious materials and really well done. You know what? That sounds a lot like Rolls-Royce, and that's really where you cap off the comparison between the BMW group and the Rolex group. Whether it's Tudor and Mini, whether it's BMW and Rolex, whether it's those super high-end gem set Rolexes and Rolls-Royce, they all line up very nicely. Moving to what I reckon is the next most obvious and perhaps even a little bit stereotypical watch group to car group comparison, it's definitely Seiko and Toyota. Both really make their bones in just selling good, hard-wearing, solid, reliable, workman-like tools. Whether it's at the low end of Seiko and you're talking about the 5 Series and some of the unbranded Seikos, they're your basic Toyota Yaris and Corollas. You start moving up in some of the Presage lines, you're starting to talk about some of the nicer Camrys, some of the nicer Priuses, perhaps some of the sort of faux four-wheel drive SUVs within the Toyota line. That lines up exactly with your Presage line and those kind of nicer but still fairly straightforward Seikos. On the Seiko line, you jump sideways into the Pro Specs, where we have the really hardcore worker bee watches for people who want to use their watch to do things. Funnily enough, Toyota will sell you cars of exactly the same kind. They'll sell you Hiluxes and Land Cruisers that are the darling of every forestry worker, miner and farmer you can find. At least in Australia, I'm guessing it's the same around the rest of the world. Then, just as Seiko comes in with its Grand Seiko and says, here's some really high-tech, really well-finished stuff that is uniquely us and very Japanese, then Toyota will say, yep, and we've got Lexus for you there. So really, again, kind of like Rolex, I find the comparison between the Seiko group and the Toyota group really quite compelling and difficult to get past. The next cab off the rank for me is Richemont. And Richemont, again, like Seiko, has a very clear analog in the car world. And for me, that is absolutely Volkswagen. If you think about what is the defining characteristics of the Richemont group, it is a really tightly controlled and structured group where each brand within that group has a very clear market, very clear idea of what they're aiming for, and a rigidly enforced hierarchy from on high, so that Seat and Skoda have a place, and Volkswagen has a place, and Audi has a place, and Lamborghini has a place. And none of these cars cross over. They might even use the same basic designs. They're so well controlled in terms of their market position, their fit, their finish, and their price, that even though they're essentially the same car, they don't compete with each other. And Richemont do exactly the same thing. Whether it's JLC and Montblanc and Vacheron, you'll often see almost the same watch turning up in brand after brand, but subtly changed, elevated, or pulled down to suit to that particular brand, that particular market segment, and never the streams are never allowed to cross. Richemont control that with an iron fist. Another similarity between the Volkswagen and the Richemont groups is that they never go down into bargain basement territory. If you're talking Skoda in the Volkswagen group, you're still talking a really nice car. I know he said watch, a really nice car. If you go down to Baume & Mercier in the Richemont group, which is their entry-level brand, you are still talking a really, really nice watch. That is not an entry-level watch, even though it is the entry-level into the Richemont group. Likewise, they will go all the way through to the stratosphere. Richemont will sell you an A. Lange & Söhne that is hundreds of thousands of dollars and many years a normal person's salary. Likewise, you go over to the Volkswagen group, a car that on one hand will sell you a family car like a Skoda. They will also sell you a Lamborghini Aventador or Huracan for over $500,000. So I see again the parallels between Richemont and Volkswagen really compelling and hard to avoid. Next, we move from Richemont into Swatch, and I must admit, at first instance, I really didn't find an equivalent to Swatch in the car group until I thought a bit more clearly, because Swatch is this huge, sprawling group. Starts at like $80 Swatch jellies, goes through to you name it prices with Jacques Drouot musical pieces, with Blancpains and Harry Winstons, and you know the sky's the limit for prices at the top, and every single point in between, with massive crossovers. So you've got like Satina and Mido and Tissot all banging into each other, and then you've got Longines and Omega and all of these other brands kind of overlapping and going in different directions, and no real discipline and no real control. On top of that, you have, even outside of the cars, Swatch Group controlling these massive technologies and finance and all of this other stuff. What's the car equivalent to that? And then it came to me, and it was actually obvious. It's clearly the Fiat Group. Because you see, Fiat is so much more than the Fiat branded cars. You've got the Fiat branded cars, obviously, and you've also got Lancia, and you've also got Alfa Romeo, and Maserati, and Ferrari. You've also got the Chrysler part of the business. So Jeep, and Chrysler, and Dodge. And then you've got now, they've taken over even more, and they're merging with the PSA Group, which gives them Citroën and the Citroën DS line, and it gives them Peugeot. And on top of that, they've bought some old GM products, and they've got Opel and Vauxhall now. So they've just got a mess of overlapping and competing and sometimes sharing and sometimes not parts and cars. And if that's not the Swatch Group, I don't know what is. Okay, so from now on it starts to get a little bit ropier. Those top couple were pretty easy, but these ones get a bit harder. Okay, so hands up everyone who's heard of the Kering Group. Okay, that's probably not many of you, because the Kering Group is a relatively small, I think it's Asian based or it might be American based, I can't remember, sort of private equity group that owns a couple of watch brands. Hands up everyone who knew that Tata was a massive maker of cars, or at least an important manufacturer of cars. No, Tata do make more than, Indian trucks and tractors. So you can see already that there's this kind of relationship between Kering and Tata, in that really, who are they and what do they do? Well, for Kering, they're the owners of Girard-Perregaux and Ulysse Nardin, two of the oldest and most important and quite significant watch brands. Tata is the owner of Land Rover and, by extension, Range Rover, and Jaguar. So I love that sort of comparison. Two barely known industrial groups, mostly either unknown completely or thought of as making tractors and stuff like that, who actually own really high-end luxury goods companies. As I said, you've got Tata with their Land Rover and Jaguar, and then you've got Kering with Ulysse Nardin and Girard-Perregaux. It's just, again, when I clicked in and I saw it, I thought, yeah, that's clearly the line there. Moving from there, it now gets a little bit ugly. So the Movado Group. The Movado Group is a group. There's Movado watches, and then there's Movement watches, and then there's a whole bunch of other crap who you've probably never heard of and don't want to hear about. That lines up exactly with the SAIC Group. SAIC, the state-owned Chinese manufacturer that essentially makes 1,000,001 different cars, which are reasonably attractive these days. Not terrible, but they've got all the substance of a Christmas cracker crown. And if that's not a Movado family kind of comparison, I don't know what is. This next watch group I started to struggle with, and that's the Fossil watch group. Now, Fossil is most famous probably for the Fossil watches itself, and also the fact that they own Zodiac. And that's an interesting brand. It's a little bit of fashion-y crud that we don't really care about that much, but there's also Zodiac, which is really on the up, starting to make some really nice pieces that have a lot more substance than you might have thought. That, to me, is the Hyundai Group. Yes, it is true that Hyundai and Kia and the sub-brand Genesis don't make a lot that's super exciting, but there are gems in there. There are things in there that we really do like in that Hyundai Kia Genesis range. And I think the same is true of the Fossil Group. Yeah, look, a lot of it is bargain basement entry, insubstantial stuff, but Fossil does have, within the Zodiac line especially, some watches we're really starting to like. And both of those groups look like they're establishing themselves to go somewhere in the future. So again, I really do see something of a line up, an alignment between the Fossil Group and Hyundai. Okay, so that leaves me with the last watch group that I could not find a comparator to, and that's LVMH. You've got TAG, Hublot, Bulgari, and Zenith. I couldn't find a comparison. I toyed with GM. Maybe Chev lines up with Tag and Caddy kind of lines up with Hublot, but there's no one in that group that really aligns with Bulgari or Zenith. I ran out of ideas. So I'm going to leave that one open and hanging as a question. If you think that there's an obvious comparison within the car world to the LVMH group, let me know in the comments. Anyway, that's been me. That's just been a bit of fun. That was how I killed time on a train ride recently, thinking about how this lines up. Let me know if you think I was right. Let me know if you think I was wrong. If you've got other ideas, stick them in the comments below. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches, and I'll see you later. Bye.